For Shabbos morning, Saturday morning cartoons, we were given the Torah. So it's the third day. Hashem says on Thursday, prepare today and tomorrow for the third day, starting from Thursday. That was a Thursday. It was the 4th of Sivan that year. And he said, on this day, you shall start refraining from any marital relations for today and tomorrow to be pure for the day of Matan Torah. So it's the third day of waiting. Given by Moshe Rabbeinu, who is from the third tribe, Shevet Levi. Moshe is the third born in his family. He had an older sister and an older brother, Miriam and Aaron. He was the third born. And he also has a name which is comprised of 3 letters, Moshe, and there are many other 3s. This is only a few of many. But another 3 is, we have the 3 great tzaddikim that we're going to be talking about in the Sikha, Moshe, David, and the Baal Shem Tov. We'll get there after I want to discuss a few other things. So going back to the question we asked before, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, the Jews arrived. That everyone agrees with. They all arrived at the mountain, and they're, you would think, waiting impatiently to hear something. Tell us about Moshe. Give us some pep talk. Arouse us more. We're excited. No, Josh, still quiet. Whatever explains this wasn't when the Gemara says, Gemara in Tractate Shabbos, that the Jews were exhausted, were fatigued because of the journey, doesn't mean a journey of walking, a physical journey. It means a spiritual journey. What happened on Rosh Chodesh? Something that never happened before in history, besides arriving at the mountain. What happened to them? Their hearts. What happened to the Jewish people? They were united like one person. I know what I'm thinking of. You don't, but I know what I'm thinking of. I know what how I feel, because it's me. No one can know what's going on inside of me as much as I do, because we're different people. We think differently, and it's kosher to think differently. Just like you don't know two people look alike, and no one gets angry at the other person. How dare you not look like me? No one should get angry at another person who disagrees with your views. In Torah, in Gemara, you have machlokas, you have Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel constantly, and they're both holy perspectives. You could both be right, just different ways of seeing things, but it's different. And the Jewish people likewise were involved in many clashes, Torah clashes, ideas how to serve Hashem better. Probably during the Sphira, they were disagreeing with each other. What's the best way of dealing with this midah, that midah? How do you perfect this character flaw, that character flaw? And they had different approaches. Okay, guess what happened on Rosh Chodesh? They became one heart and one person. That's a journey. From 2 beings becoming one, it's a spiritual journey that can knock you out cold. They were so emotionally exhausted from this transition from becoming from many people to one being. They became one with Moshe. The simplest Jew and Moshe became like one body, one soul. They had no koiches because of that emotional, traumatic experience. It was like, wow, like we're going up heights. You're learning Rus. Sure, you're learning Rus. There's no question about that. And what does it say about Rus? When did Naomi, her mother-in-law, stop trying to dissuade her from converting? When she saw that she really means it. She saw that she's persistent and not taking no for an answer and saying, where you go, I will go, the famous words, I will go, I will die with you. I mean, I'm not separating myself from you. Unlike her sister-in-law, Orpah, some say they were sisters, but sister-in-law, they were both married to Machlon and Kilion, the 2 sons of Elimelech, who passed away. They tragically passed away also. And Naomi was bereft with her 2 daughter-in-laws. And both of them stayed on with the poor Naomi, impoverished. And they left to the lands of Moab, and they deserted their brethren who in Israel were suffering from a famine. The whole story. And Elimelech, who's a very big, prominent leader, was punished. He passed away, and his wife was suffering. She lost her 2 son-in-laws. And both son-in-laws married out, by the way. They married non-Jewish girls. Rus wasn't Jewish, and neither was Orpah. But yet, Rus stayed on. Orpah almost, but all doesn't count. You know what happened that night, by the way? When soon as she kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, then she left. It says, you know where she went? She was violated consensually, but violated by 100 men. And we don't know who, one of those men impregnated her with, guess who? Goliath. So Goliath, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like, and Goliath is much older than David, because David is the great grandson of Rus. So this was Orpah had, when you come very close to almost converting, and then no, she went, all the spirit that she almost had left her, and then she was open for who knows what. As a result, she had Goliath as one of her sons, actually. But going back, so what convinced Ruth what convinced Naomi that Ruth, her daughter-in-law, is sincere? And she was persistent. But the Hebrew word is misameses. Misameses means persistent, but it also means she was straining herself. Ruth aged. As she committed herself to Judaism, full force, it took so much out of her that she had a hard time walking. She couldn't move her body. The emotional trauma of becoming of converting and taking no for an answer caused her to age, and she could not walk. She started walking like an older woman. When Naomi saw that it's affecting her physically, wow, she is for real. That is a real convert. She means it sincerely. She didn't just, see her, saying no, but she actually saw a change in her body. Likewise, we find a story in Gemara with Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, two great. Reish Lakish was a pirate. He was a thief before he became a Baal Tshuva. So a famous story in the Gemara. He was an acrobat. He was able to jump and grab and steal. As soon as he accepted, the story goes that Rabbi Yochanan convinced him to do tshuva, he lost his acrobatic strength. The deep commitment of the Yiddishkeit weakened him physically. The same thing is true of the Jewish people. They were knocked out, they were fatigued and exhausted from the spiritual elevation, from being separate people to becoming one entity, which is like becoming a different kind of human being altogether. Merging together as a one. That's the Rebbe's answer. There's more to it, but that's the Nekuda of the Rebbe's answer. Okay. What are the reasons why we eat milk, essentialists? How many reasons do you know?
Is white and white.
What? Color is white, yeah.
So white it's like the chesed.
Like?
White is compared to chesed.
Chesed, oh, okay. But it's more than that. Since you mentioned white, I'll let you know that biologically speaking, when a woman becomes pregnant, her blood, her normal menstrual cycle, the blood turns into milk for the baby to be born. It gets diluted, and it becomes formed into milk. So 7 days, a woman has to wait for her husband for a 7-day period of not seeing any blood. We had to wait 7 weeks, 7 days, 7 weeks. We were like Hashem's wife, and for us to be able to reunite with our husband, Hashem himself, be one with him, we had to go through a 7-week period. And the 7 week reminds us of blood, of dam. But when we are finished with that 7-week period, now we are able to unite and produce and procreate in the world, which means by doing a mitzvah, we actually are able to bring Hashem into this world like children. So the idea of cholov represents the Shavuos is the aftermath of the 7 weeks, which are compared to blood. Why is it compared to blood? Because a woman waits 7 days, have to have 7 consecutive days for her to be able to go to the mikveh. Another reason, this is not one of the well-known reasons. Moshe Rabbeinu, on the 6th day of Sivan, was found by Basya Bas Paro. 3 months, my mother was able to hide him, but he was born on Zayin Adar, and for 3 months she was able to hide him. The reason why she was able to hide him for 3 months, because they made a calculation, the Egyptians, that she's probably not. He was born after 6. He was a 6-month baby. He was born on the first day of the 7th month. They calculated, there's 3 more months when the baby will be born. But he was born early, and she was able to hide him. But once the 3 months were up, the 9 months were up, they were looking after him. They were searching him. So she put him in the water. That was Vav Sivan. 3 months after Zayin Adar is Nisan, Ir, Sivan. On Vav Sivan, he was found. And then they nursed him Who was the one who wanted to nurse him? Batya wanted to nurse him. He didn't drink the milk. He didn't want to nurse from her, non-Jewish. The mouth that is going to speak with Hashem on Har Sinai on this very day should nurse from someone unclean. And because Moshe did not nurse the milk from Batya or whoever else she wanted to give her to, only the mother of Yocheved, the mother of Miriam, not even knowing that's the mother of the baby. So Yocheved was the one and only the one to nurse Moshe with milk. That's why to commemorate that we have milk on Shavuos. Another reason, this is a well-known reason, we couldn't eat flesh. That on that Shavuos, that day of Matan Torah, the Jews could not eat any meat. Why? Because all the meat they had in their refrigerator was not kosher. Why wasn't it kosher? They knew the laws. They knew ahead of time the law. They learned Torah. Torah was known, but because they weren't obligated to keep the laws of shechita, the laws of kashrus, yet, even if they know the law, if someone was not obligated in the laws of shechita, the slaughtering is worthless. It's as if the meat has been slaughtered by a non-Jew, not kosher. So even though they slaughtered properly, but it wasn't done by a person who was obligated yet, so it remains unkosher. And all the kalim became treif too. And you can't kosher it on Shabbos that day. You can't kosher it on Shabbos, and you can't slaughter new meat, but slaughtering is a malachah. They already had certain malachah they knew about, even before the Torah was given. So because of that, they were forced to eat a milk. Also, interesting, I know it's not a class of halacha, but I like to throw these things out. Something interesting. There's the Sefer HaChinuch, who lists all the negative commandments by numbers. Not to eat milk and meat is number 66. The 66th negative commandment of the 365, number 66, is do not mix milk and meat. Right? The 66th day of the year, if you start from Aleph Nisan, Nisan has 30 days, year is 29. You count until Vav Sivan, the Torah was given on the 66th day. So on the 66th day of the year, starting from Pesach, from Nisan, not from Tishrei, if you start from Nisan, you go up till Vav Sivan, it equals to 66. Since the mitzvah of not eating basar v'cholov, meat and milk, was given, therefore on Shavuos we have 2 meals. And yes, we do have to have leishiks, by the way. In fact, the obligation to eat meat is a greater obligation than milk. Milk is only a custom. Meat is a chiyuv, more. It was a chiyuv from the Torah when we had the Beis Hamikdash, but still an obligation now to have a meat, unless you can't tolerate it. Some people can't tolerate it; they're allergic, or they just can't stand it. They're whatever, vegetarian. You know, I'm not going to get into that right now. But if you don't have that problem, you are obligated to have meat on all the Yom Tovim, but you have to make sure you don't have the meat and milk together. That's all you have to separate. Another answer. 2 lechem, you know the 2 lechems that were offered in the Beis Hamikdash, shtei halechem, twin breads, they were offered as a communal sacrifice made from wheat. And that allowed from here on that anyone who wanted to offer a flour offering, a meal offering to the Beis Hamikdash can only do so from a new influx of wheat only after Shavuos. First you had to have the offering in the Beis Hamikdash with the 2 breads. 2 breads sound like 2 meals. 2 breads, you wash 2 meals. Why do I have to have 2 meals? Why can't I just have, why do I have to wash twice? Because you can't have milks and flakes in 1 meal. Now, I know today we don't wash for cheesecake, but some do. And if you do wash for cheesecake, you're eating a milky meal, you cannot eat, even if you wait 6 hours, and you still haven't benched for the milk yet. If you haven't benched for the milk yet, even though you waited 6 hours, and you don't have to wait 6 hours, you just have to wait half an hour or an hour from milk to flesh. You cannot eat meat until you bench first and finish your milchik meal. And likewise, of course, the other way around. If you eat fleishiks, you have to wait 6 hours. But even the 6 hours are not enough if you haven't benched yet from the fleishik meal before you want to eat milchiks. So since we have 2 lechem, we also have 2 meals that must be separated by a benching, and thus we have to wash twice. Although today the custom is not to wash for milk, just to have milchiks. Cheese or whatever. So that's another answer. Another answer, the angels who visited Avram Avinu, Avram offered them milchiks and fleishiks. He didn't eat it, but the angels ate milk and meat together. So when the angels were complaining to Hashem, why are you giving the Torah to this mortal man? to mortals, to human beings. They're flawed. Give it to keep. We're here. This is our territory. It belongs in Shemayim. The Torah belongs in Shemayim. We're here, and the Torah comes from Shemayim, and we are in Shemayim. Give it to us. So what was the response? You guys ate milk and meat together. Rome didn't. The Jews didn't, even before the Torah was given. You did. Okay, so you know everything, right? You keep all the Torahs for you, and yet you ate milk and meat, and they don't. So therefore, to commemorate the idea that they mix milk and meat, and we have two meals, but we're not going to mix milk and meat, we have a milk and meal too. One last answer. This is very not well known. When you finish a mitzvah, we counted 49 days, 49-day mitzvah. Separate mitzvahs, but we finally finished counting, and it's not easy to not to forget. It's very easy to forget one night. And we did it. We're successful. We make a party. We make when you finish a masechta, you finish a tractate, you finish a mitzvah, we make a suda. But if it's going to be a fleshik suda, no one's going to notice anything because we anyways eat fleshik on Montif. So we make a milk suda, and some have the custom of having milchiks on the night of, not during the day, on the night of the first night, meaning the first night of Shavuos, not the first day of Shavuos. They have a milchik meal the first night. They make kiddush and have a milchik the first night as a celebration of concluding the whole mitzvah of counting the Omer. These are some of the reasons, not all. There are some more as to why we have milchiks. Why do we learn about Rus on Shavuos? No answer. You're learning about it, aren't you? Rus, because we all went through conversion. To remind us that do not look at a convert as if they're second-class citizens. We all went through that experience. Number two, Rus was the great-great-grandmother of David HaMelech. Wasn't just said before, passed away on Shavuos. Was born on Shavuos. In fact, the very last words of Rus is David HaMelech's lineage. Rus married Boaz. They had a son, Oved, Yishai, and then David HaMelech. Wow. Okay. One other last thing I want to mention, and it's very important. That we find something interesting. The parsha that has the Ten Commandments, what's the name of the parsha? Yisro, a convert. On Shavuos, what do we read a lot about? Rus, another convert. So we see that Gerus conversion is very much connected to the Matan Torah. And perhaps an additional reason for that is that we're told, even though you're Jewish, and once you're Jewish, you can't ever give that up. It's impossible. Nothing can change that. But you're missing the choice that a convert goes through. A convert did not have to embrace Judaism. There's no mitzvah for a convert to become Jewish. And yet they chose freely, without anyone imposing upon them, to do it. And sometimes it's Mesiras Nefesh, as the case with Rus. Wow, so empty here. Where's everyone? They're not here? They're vacation or something? It does bother me. I can't deny that. Where are they? I don't know. Anyone know?
People.
Yeah, you can tell at the end of the year. I get, I feed off the people listening. I'm not discounting you. I'm just saying, the larger the crowd, the easier for me to talk, especially when you're tired. Yes.
So how did you all went through the conversion before you went to Mount Sinai? And that went to
Yeah, Sinai is when all the Jews went through a whole mechanism. Men went through Mila, and then there was toiveling, they toiveled, and they immersed in the mikveh. And there was also a korban, special sacrifice that was offered. So everything, the whole 9 yards. We went through all the steps that a regular convert has to go
the
through.
equivalent,
Yeah.
um,
So, but now that we're all Jewish, we're all there, we're in it, but I'm gonna have to go. No one has to go through the conversion anymore. Yeah.
how do you how was it?
No, Ruth was a real convert.
No, I can't say it's nefesh, like the
Mesiras Nefesh.
yeah.
I'll get there in a second. So before we get to Ruth's Mesiras Nefesh, get to the Sikha maybe eventually. What was I saying? Oh, Perhaps the lesson for all of us is try to mimic the convert. Just like a convert chose freely. They have to jump. They're not obligated. Don't just suffice yourself. I'm Jewish, so I'll just, go along with the flow. Choose. Take the Yisro choice in your life. Choose to grow in your life. Have Mesiras Nefesh. Have self-sacrifice to go to a level you don't have to go to. Learn from Rus. Learn from Yisro. And the more you choose your Judaism, not just, have it because of birth when you were born in it, you get more enthusiasm, there's more fervor, there's more joy. It's something that you chose yourself. Converts are very excited about their new life story. Now, I said about Rus being a tremendous self-sacrifice, and says her self-sacrifice superseded Avraham Avinu and Yitzchak Avinu by the Akedah. Wow. That was pretty heavy, the Akedah. Hashem says, take your son. And what was the Mesiras Nefesh of Rus? So you know the story. She was a Moabite. And it wasn't known that there's a distinction between Moabite men and Moabite women. The laws were, because the Moabite men were very cruel. They didn't offer us any drink when we were passing through. They were, selfish people and had no good normal traits of the decency and honesty. Decency, that is. They were, even if they convert, you're not allowed to. We don't know who they are, so the whole world's mixed. But when we knew who they were, we're not allowed to intermarry, even if they convert. So it was not known in the time of Rus. It was understood it includes male and female Moabites. Neither of them can marry into the Jewish fold, which would mean to her that she can never get married. She can't marry a non-Jew. She's Jewish. She's going to become a Jew. If she becomes a Jew, which she wanted and persisted, although she saw her mother-in-law. And guess what? When she comes back to the land of Israel, and they're going to point to her, what are they going to say? Oh, that's the shiksa. That's the non-Jewish girl that Elimelech's sons, married. It's a disgrace. Imagine you're the shell, you're the shiksa. You're the lady who, because of you, your husband, the two sons of Naomi and Elimelech passed away. Both of them married out. I mean, she was a daughter of a king, Eglon, Melech Moab. She was a daughter. She had royalty in her family. She had lines waiting for her to become a Jew. She wouldn't be able to get married. Be a single the rest of her life, and be looked down upon as the shiksa. Once upon people, that's how people are. Oh, you, one's a shiksa, always a shiksa. And you had the chutzpah to marry into a Jewish family, and as a result of your marriage, your intermarriage, your husband was punished, and your mother-in-law suffered henna. Because your mother-in-law suffering, all that. And yet she chose something she didn't have to. When Hashem told Avraham, I want you to slaughter your son Yitzchak, he had no choice. He had to. Hashem command. Hashem's commanding him. But she wasn't commanded to become Jewish. She chose Judaism. So unlike Yisro, if he would become Jewish, he was Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law. Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law. Wow. The father-in-law, the leader of the generation, would certainly be looked up upon, not down upon. So that's one type of conversion. But he was still sincere. He didn't do it for that reason. But it was not that much of Mesiras Nefesh. But when it comes to Rus had self-sacrificed him endlessly. No comparison. As it gets to the Sichim, what is the idea of Malchus? We were called kingly priests, so we know that Malchus, kingship, is connected to Matan Torah. So in the Sicha here, on the first page, first page we can skip because we already said it outside. You go to a second page. It also says Moshe Rabbeinu was the king, David HaMelech was the first king, and Baal Shem Tov was also the first leader of the Jewish people. Okay, now take a look at the third page. Top of the third page where it says Gimel. What's the connection between these three people and the attribute of Malchus? What is the role of a Melech? Who is a Melech? What kind of person is he? It's a person that has the right, a real Melech has the right, he doesn't get a salary, but he's allowed to confiscate property from his people if there's a need for the country's sake. He has no limits of what he can do, as long as there's a legitimate reason to do so. And the Sanhedrin paskins he's allowed to. The Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court, can give him permission to break through people's properties, confiscate it if there's a need for it. A king has all his needs provided by the people. He doesn't mingle with the people. He has all his needs are taken care of. He has no worries of where will I get my parnasa from, because they have to support him. He's the heart and soul of his people. The heart pumps blood into the body. He's the pumps life into his people, and obviously they reciprocate. Just like a heart, blood flows from the heart to the rest of the body, comes right back into the heart, goes back and forth. It's reciprocal. So a king gives of himself to his people and gets back. There's a reciprocity. Also, the king, one word, a king with one word can uproot mountains. This we saw by the Rebbe. The Rebbe would talk by Fabrengen and give say one word, and the entire world was, the entire Lubavitch world was up in arms to fulfill his wishes immediately. Amar Malka Akartora, the king says, and mountains are uprooted. So this is the power of Malchus. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu gave a Jew the strength. I can understand when every Jew has this strength, not to look at things going on in the world as distractions at all, but rather like a king who's removed, who's a shoulder and up above the rest of the world. Jewish pride, Jewish unity, Jewish identity is what the leaders, these three leaders, give and feed into every single Jew, the ability, in spite of issues that we have, to feel untainted, not worried about it, not distracted, not worried, I should say, not worried about about issues that are going on in their lives, but rather feel like the whole world is theirs. Everything that they need will be provided, and there's nothing to worry about. Not that they have bitachon, even beyond bitachon. What's the reason I don't even need to have bitachon? It's obvious. That power of Malchus is hard to understand, the Rebbe asks. I can understand if the neshama, the soul in heaven, the heavenly soul that's not in a body yet, yeah, that soul has no bodily issues and temptations and limitations. But once the neshama is in the guf, how can a person with a neshama, a human being in a physical body, reach that level? And the answer is through these three leaders. The difference is as follows. Moshe Rabbeinu offered the freedom of being a melech in his time, in his generation. What was his generation? Well, let's give it a little hakdama. There were three different time periods. There were Jews who actually eyewitnessed the Torah being given. You could imagine how it affected them. They were actually there, alive in the body, when it affected them. Then there were Jews who were not there, but their parents and their grandparents were there, and they heard it, and they were also impacted, but not to the same degree. But not to the Jewish people only, but the world abroad. When the Torah was given, the whole world was like in a trance. There was no echo. Remember, why was there no echo? Mentioned last week, my brother mentioned last week. There was no echo. Why was there no echo? Doesn't that minimize the tone of Hashem's voice? Why was there no echo? What's the answer? And if there was no echo and the voice was really loud, that would be a miracle. Why make a miracle like that? What was the answer that was given? The answer was, of course, an echo is caused by bouncing off. When something bounces off a wall, a surface, it creates an echo. That's an echo, you see. When Hashem spoke, it permeated, penetrated the world. It silenced the world. It jolted the whole world out of its crudeness, out of its grubkeit in Yiddish, its vulgarity. The world became jolted and refined just by the experience of Matan Torah. So that's the aftermath of Matan Torah. But then the third level is when the world already has worn off completely. Matan Torah's effect has worn off, and now it's dark and gloomy in the world. And yet, we're able to even take a world like that, a dark, dismal world full of klipa, filled with a world full of either denying God, ignoring Hashem, or even using Hashem as an accomplice to their, like you have the deniers of God, those who the idolaters, or the deniers, the atheists, or even worse, the jihadists, who use so-called God for their murdering people, suicide bombers, homicide bombers, who use God, their so-called God that they believe in, to promote murder. So they're implicating Hashem in their sin. That's the worst. So you have three levels. You have idolatry, you have atheism, which is even worse than idolatry. Idolatry, at least you believe, even though idolatry is terrible, but at least you're believing that there's a God. Even the idolaters they believe in Hashem. They just don't believe that Hashem is still around taking care of the world. But they do believe in a creator. Whereas an atheist doesn't believe in anything. Free for all. But at least they're not using God. They don't believe in God. They're not using God as an accomplice to their sin. The worst of humanity. The barbarians are the jihadists. They are the scum of humanity, if they can even call them human. They're the lowest level. So this is the world we're in right now. How do we get the strength to be able to feel like a king, free? Don't worry, no worries. Rise above. Sorry, one was when the Jews were in the Midbar, when they were in the Midbar, they were actually free from all kinds of worries. They had everything they wanted. They had the manna from heaven. They had the Be'er Shel Miriam. They had the flowers of glory. Everything was provided miraculously. When you ate the man, you were eating a mimer. You were eating godliness. The man was not a physical form, but it was godliness. Planting and so on and so forth. Then comes the third era, when the Jews are in Golis. Not just a Golis, any Golis, but a dark, dismal Golis, like the Baal Shem Tov lived after the terrible persecutions of Khmelnytsky in 1648, 1649, the Shabtai Tzvi era, where the Jews were like drowning in loss of their hope, and they gave up on every. Melech were only limited in their generation. God forbid to say that Moshe Rabbeinu was only a Rebbe, only a contributor in his generation. Moshe Rabbeinu is Rabbeinu. We call him now Rabbeinu. He's our Rebbe. So he obviously helps people even in Golos. And David Melech is called David Melech Yisrael. All Jews, Chai V'Kayim. And the Baal Shem Tov is the one to bring Mashiach, and that every generation needs that. So the Rebbe says, where do we have the equivalent of being in the Midbar? being in Eretz Yisrael or being in a dark, gloomy Golos, in our own service to Hashem. What part of our life? So he says like this: Torah learning is equivalent to being in the midbar. When a person learns Torah and you're really into it, you don't hear what's going on in the world. You're engrossed in Torah. Torah is like Hashem's chachma, given to us to understand, but it's godly. And when you're in Hashem's domain, he's the melech. You're also like the melech. And the fact that Torah has the power to change nature, by the way. Like for example, we saw by Rav Shimon ben Yochai that there was a drought. He didn't pray for rain. He said a pasuk. He quoted a pasuk in Tehillim. He quoted the pasuk, and as he quoted this pasuk, he was able to bring rain down in perfect measure. Unlike the story of someone who lived generations before him, Koni Hamago, Koni the circle maker, who lived hundreds of years before the Rashbi, lived during the first temple, first Beit HaMikdash. He said, God, I'm making a circle, and I'm not going to move out of the circle until you bring rain. Spoke like a child to a father, the little chutzpah, and Hashem brought some rain, but only trickles. Sorry, God, that's not what I asked for. That doesn't do it. So Hashem brought a storm of rain, a gushing rain, like a marble. That's too much. We can't take that much. So Hashem finally gave him the right. So when it comes to davening, davening is not as effective as a person who is a Torah learner, but someone who personifies Torah. Someone who has no ego at all. His whole ego is just Torah itself. Rav Shimon ben Yochai is one of the examples. A person who, but even if you're not Rav Shimon ben Yochai, but 1 hour a day that you learn, you're in a different world. You're in the midbar. You're in a different. It's like man coming from heaven. You don't feel anything. You're completely removed from the outside, distractions. That's equivalent. That's where Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Jew who's a Torah learner the strength of a melech. And there's David Melech. He says, even when you're not you're involved in tefillah. Like David Melech is all about pillim, which is praying, davening to Hashem. Even when you're not able to just command rain come down, but rather you have to ask for rain. You're petitioning to Hashem. You're asking, please, Hashem, respond. Now Hashem might respond, he might not respond. You're not the one in charge, he's the one in charge. You're davening, okay, you did your job, and he will do what he sees right. David HaMelech was the one to give a davener the power of a learner. That even when you're not learning Torah, when you're davening and you're expressing your own personal needs, when you daven, it's your own words, even though we have a set nusach, but really the person prays, it's your own feelings that you're expressing. Yes, to God. So Hashem is very much in my life. I'm davening to him because I believe he will provide. He can provide. No one else can provide. I don't believe that anyone else can provide me except for Hashem. That's good. That's the equivalent of the Jews who were in Eretz Yisrael, they were involved in physical, issues, activity, but in Eretz Yisrael, you see you see Hashem is the provider of your parnasa through your work. Likewise, davening is like that. On the one hand, you're davening to Hashem, but you're davening to Hashem to take care of your personal needs. So it's not like Torah learning, which is Hashem's chachma. The third level is when you're involved in everyday affairs like eating and drinking, going to sleep, going to business, living not in Hashem's domain now, you're in your own domain. You're not davening, you're not learning, you're not davening, you're eating, or going about your business, or going to sleep. Can I feel like a melech even then? That's the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov was the one that was able to breathe into the world, the dark world, and an ability for a Jew to see right through it, X-ray vision, to see right through that dark world. Hashem is Malukah, that the Eibishter is the boss, and that therefore you can carry out a feeling of, I am also a melech. An Eved of a melech is a melech. Going back to David HaMelech, one more thing I want to say, one more thing. It's interesting. What is Tehillim? Is it prayers or the Torah? Both. When a person has to daven, when a person's sick, what do you say? You say Tehillim. What is Tehillim? Part of Tanakh. So it's tefillah that became part of Torah. In fact, David HaMelech says, give me the power that my tefillah should have the same power as the person learning. And the psalm, Tehillim, is part of Tanakh. So that's the chiddush of David HaMelech over Moshe Rabbeinu was that he was able to instill the same feeling that you get when you're learning and when you're davening. That there's no question Hashem is kind, he will respond to me. And there'll be, as he did to David HaMelech all the time. Yeah.
So in the Baal temple.
Yep.
He represents during dark time. He's one document that's
Right.
involves living in the real world and go.
Yes, living in the world, but you're, yeah, but you're involved in, when you're involved in prayer, you're in Hashem's domain to a certain extent. Not completely, it's half-half. It's about me. I have needs. I have feelings. I'll express my feelings, but who am I expressing it to? I'm not eating, I'm dominating. I'm presenting it to Hashem. So there's a Hashem in your life, but it's about you. That's a person living in Eretz Yisrael who's doing things that are down to earth things, planting and plowing and getting involved in business issues, maybe politics also. But you can feel Hashem is running the show. So it's Hashem taking care of your needs, but it's your need. Torah is not your need, it's Hashem's need. Torah is God's world, and you're swimming into God's ocean. It's very enjoyable when you sit and learn for an hour, half an hour, whatever it is. You can get into it. They ever wanted people to really, that 1 hour, it's like that hour, there's nothing else in the world like this. Like a melech. A melech has no worries. A king has no worries. Everything is provided for him. I don't even need bitachon. I'm not even thinking about it. Bitachon is when you have to fight off question marks. Bitachon comes to the rescue. But when you don't have anything, it's like it doesn't exist. That's the power of Malchus, that's why they're all connected to Shavuos, because Hashem referred to us, gave us the title yesterday was Beis. On Beis Sivan, we got the title, you are kingly priest. You have the power, through the helps of your leaders, who can excavate and dig deep into you and find the Malchus within every single Jew. Yes?
I think it's so much there about Baal temple, living in the real world.
Even when you're involved in a world that's contrary to God, not just in a world where nature runs its course, but where things that are going on in the world seem to be contrary to godliness. When you're seeing those things, it's hard to feel, at rest and not to be bothered by it. So Baal Shem Tov gave a Jew the power and the ability to confront the darkness in such a way where it's everybody would say that you don't have. There's no struggle. You don't feel even the struggle to overcome. There's a challenge, and I have to overcome a challenge. I'm a Jew. I'm above all that. It doesn't affect you. Of course, it bothers you that we don't have Mashiach yet. That's true, but it doesn't affect your learning or your davening. Your neshama was not put into ghosts. My body, you can stop me from doing things, but my soul is not at all. I feel the same feeling of what's the word I'm using? Freedom, but it's a word. You're serene. There's peace and serenity in your life. Yep.
We're getting the action and Torah.
Yep. Torah is compared to the Midbar.
Yes.
Davening is compared to being in Eretz Yisrael. Hashem is compared to dark gullies, like he was. Hashem is right after the Jews were like suffering from nothing else you can imagine. What? Mitzvahs, yes, mitzvahs too, but especially when you're involved in your everyday affairs, l'shem shamayim, for Hashem's sake, like eating l'shem shamayim, being able to see Hashem even in areas of your life that are not related to God, seemingly. Even in areas that seem to be difficult to connect to Hashem because things are not going well for your life. There's a lot of goyishkeit, a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of this, a lot of that. What? Yeah. Not just that, we're able to, not even that, but beyond that, even without the Torah learning, we're able to see through things that are going on in the world, see Hashem's hands in everything, even when it seems to be contrary to Hashem, anti-God. We can see the godliness in every little thing in the world and thus feel nothing to worry about. That's the power, that's the Baal Shem Tov contribution. And all three are connected to Shavuos because Shavuos is the day, Shavuos is the Yom Tov, but right before that Yom Tov, we were given that title. You are all special people. You are Mamlechas Kohanim, you are above and beyond the whole all the rules of nature. This is the Sikha in Hebrew. I didn't go through it because it would take too long. But I wanted you to have the Sikha. Then at the end, you'll see my brother I put the 10 Commandments as he explains it, how they're not commandments, but declarations So that's the last few pages of what I sent you, what I gave you. Just one more thing I want to mention. The Clay Yoker has a very interesting. He said you can read the Aseret Dibros horizontally. Anochi Hashem, like I am God, your God. Do not murder. What's the connection? Because every person is created in the image of Hashem. Especially if you're a Jew, you have a chelik elikam yimal mamash. You have a piece of God in you. By murdering, you're not just affecting a person; you're actually interfering with Hashem Himself. In other words, you're dismissing the godly image that every person has, even a non-Jew, by the way. Also murder. That's number 1 and 6. How you read them across. Then the second commandment is do not have any other gods, which is adultery. Hashem is married to us. Having so-called other gods is synonymous with adultery, which is the 7th commandment. The 2nd and the 7th, read it across horizontally. The 3rd commandment is swearing falsely. The 8th commandment is do not steal. When a person steals, what usually happens to back up his denial, I didn't steal, he swears. So swearing falsely is a result of stealing. The 4th commandment is Shabbos. What is Shabbos? Well, Hashem created the world, and we testify to that by keeping Shabbos. If you don't keep Shabbos, what happens? You're saying false testimony on God. That's the 8th commandment. Do not bear false witness against your friend. In this case, means God, who's also your friend. Do not bear false witness. 1 second, I can skip one. Yeah, but the 9th commandment, the 9th commandment. And the 5th and the 10th are also connected. I want to just mention one more thing. I don't know if you ever notice it. When the Torah is read during a Aseret Dibros, there's 2 ways of reading it. One is sentence structure, which is, for example, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God, that took you out of Mitzrayim. End of sentence. If you read the way it's read in the shul, in public, the Balkore, when he reads it, he doesn't read it like that. He reads it as a sentence that has about 60 words. I am God, your God. I am God, your God. And the first 2 commandments are together as one sentence. It doesn't go by structure. It goes by commandment. The first 2 commandments are like one. They were said in one shot. No matter how short or how long the commandment. So you can have a commandment that's 60 words or 2 words. Do not murder. It's considered an entire sentence. So the way it's read in shul is very different than the way you would normally read. It has a name called Tam Elyon, where the musical sounds are on top of the word. Most of these sounds, when it's read in public, you'll notice the sounds. If you look at the words, you'll see it from full truck are on top of the word. Whereas the regular reading, according to the structure of sentence, most of the musical sounds are on the bottom of the word. There's 2 ways to read. Go by sentence structure or go by commandment. Now, do not murder is 2 words. Lo tirsach. It's a whole. When it's read in public on Shavuos, it's read as a whole sentence. Lo tirsach. When you read it normally, you read do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, and I think one other commandment. That's a pasuk. There's no pasuk in Chumash that has 2 words. 3 words is the shortest verse in Chumash. And there aren't too many psukim that have as little as 3 words. But 2 doesn't exist. The only time it exists is when we read the 10 Commandments, we read do not murder as a complete sentence. So you have gigantic, lopsided 60-word sentences. Like, for example, Shabbos, very, very long to talk. Remember the Shabbos, so 6 days this, 6 days that, and it takes about 55 or 60 words. I think around 55 or 60 words. That's twice as long as the longest sentence structure in the entire Chumash. Most of the Chumash, you don't have most of the Chumash, you don't have a pasuk that has as many as 30 words. Usually it's 20, 15, 20. 30 is considered very long. In the Aseret Dibros, you have two sentences that are 60 words long. And then 4 sentences that are 2 words. Do not murder, sentence. Do not commit adultery, sentence. Do not steal, sentence. 3, not 4. 3. 3 of those on the 10. Okay, so we'll stop here. Have a wonderful yontif. Simcha, be mekabel l'Torah b'simcha v'pnimius, with joy, but internalize it. And the joy. What's the reason why we say the joy? Because the Jewish people were shocked. They were forced to accept the Torah. Hashem forced us. It might not be joyful. We were in awe. So this time we should not accept it only under duress, but it should be with simcha and also with pnimius. Really? Oh, by the way, there's a little apartment on that. No bed, no bed. No. Old Boston pig, yeah. Oh. Kids and animals. Finally, go out the dog. They can go on. One. Big. Like, more probably not that. Thank you for that. Thank you. Still, I know, like, from bottom line. It's fine. But you also don't forget what he said. Not about anyone. Somebody, what is that? Think that his brother. After that, both sure. Yes, like, you know, that would be good. I should. But don't be, you got like, that the ocean made after that, but he just keeps like pulling out. I mean, you can see all information. There's some on one and then those on one. Please. It's good that we read. Yeah. I'm not. What? I'm losing. I did.
I heard Alan between 1:30 when you're waiting for Rico. And that you really enjoyed it, you know, there. That would safe travels, that's not this show. Good answer, good job, and we did enjoy talking with you last week and when you're back, just have time to hang out with you. There's no each other will have any time, yeah, so.
I know. Thank you for your work. We're going to be very important. And the phone is one phone and finding what is the phone that we have. Did you enjoy the talk yesterday? Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I love that way she like said, think of them in two separate people. Yeah, and then it's like the one is taking, and not taking it bad, but just to realize what the source of the they're it's really nice. I see it now. I see the change. It looks really good. Yeah, yeah. They like it. I don't know why, but like great when it's not you just see it. I don't know what it is. Like I see it so yesterday, today, very yesterday. You're like under real freedom is like sorry, we have the period.